helping students and healthcare professionals not just survive, but thrive with a purpose. This is the CMDA Student Pulse podcast with your host, Bill Reichardt, National Director of CMDA Campus Ministries.
Well, welcome to another episode of CMDA's Student Pulse podcast. I'm Bill Reichardt, National Director for Campus and Community Ministries here at CMDA. And we're in studio today, and I have two special guests, Wes Ehrhart, Connor Ham. Welcome.
Hey.
We'll be getting a little bit more out of you as this conversation moves further. But before we jump into our conversation, I want to give a little background of who you are and what you do. So, Wes, why don't you go ahead and just share, what do you do with CMDA?
I am the Western Regional Director, and so I work with Campus Community Ministries and get a chance to connect with people all over, see the different ministries, whether it be on campus or local community chapters that are meeting. So that's kind of the bulk of what we do, and Connor shares a similar role.
Yeah. Connor?
Same. So I'm also a regional director working with our campus and our community ministries, but I am the regional director for the Midwest region. So that goes from Kentucky up to Michigan and then over to North Dakota and down to Kansas.
Okay. Well, the reason I wanted to have you guys on the podcast was, well, first of all, I think, those in your region may know you by now. You've been at this role with CMDA for just about 3 years. But there's going to be a lot of folks who this may be their first introduction to you, and that's an opportunity for them to get to know you better. Also, to hear with the fresh eyes that you brought to your role as an RD, kind of your perspectives of what you're doing, the challenges and opportunities that you're seeing on the field. So that's what I'm hoping to dive into and talk about and discover a little bit more. So talk a little bit about CMDA and how you became connected, because first of all, your backgrounds are both in vocational ministry, right? What were you doing before CMDA?
Before CMDA, I was executive dean for Western Seminary, both the Sacramento and San Jose campuses. The main campus is out of Portland, and of course, they've got a global campus online. So I was working there administrative, pastoral, teaching. It was a great mix of things, and it was fun to work in regional directing, if that's a some sort of vocation. But it was very humbling to be around a lot of experienced, gifted people who've giving their lives to Christian service.
So how did you hear about CMDA? Because that's the $1 million question. Because not being around healthcare professionals vocationally, how did you discover a ministry like this that is ministering to healthcare professionals?
Well, the ironic point is that my own seminary's website, you guys had placed it on the placement page on my own seminary's website. So that's where I found out, but knew some local physicians. One student I had in class who was a CMDA member and told me, oh, yeah, you'd be a great fit for this. But really, it goes before that, because when I was even in the seminary, I would tell students, look, are you sure you're called to vocational ministry, like full-time? Maybe you're called to stay computer scientist and work in that field and live out your faith there, contribute to your church as an elder or someone who's theologically trained, but also just live out your faith in the context of where you are. So to think that there was something like that for healthcare professionals, especially coming out of COVID, where it was 2021, I think was when I was looking that it was, wow, this is exciting. So having done some fellowship and teaching on it, it was really nice to even be considered part of it. So. Yeah,
very good. What about you, Connor?
Yeah, well, I guess a slight correction. Technically, I don't have a background in vocational ministry. This is really my first full-time ministry role. Okay. I do have a background in ministry and theological education. Okay. And so my background, I did my undergraduate education at Moody Bible Institute. I was a language nerd. I did Greek and Hebrew at Moody. I was biblical languages for my major. Developed a love for academics and for the languages, and especially for the first translation that was ever made of the Old Testament. The Hebrew was translated into Greek in the 2nd and 3rd century BC, and so the Septuagint is the name of that translation, and I wanted to study that more. So I went to Belgium, and I did a master's degree there, which I finished in 2020, and my time abroad was cut short a little bit by the pandemic, so I finished the last couple months of that remotely from my dad's living room in Northwest Ohio, and that's where I finished my thesis. And then around that time, I was planning on going to seminary in Arizona, but with COVID and, it was just there was a lot of uncertainty. It was really unclear whether the church internship I had lined up in Arizona was going to work out, whether the scholarship that was attending that internship would come through. Nobody knew what the giving patterns would be through the pandemic with that church. And so I ended up taking a post as a PhD student instead, and I moved to Cincinnati. And so I had arrived in Cincinnati in August of 2020 and was starting doctoral work and looking for some ministry experience. And through my church, I started a part-time role with CMDA. And so really my first ministry job was actually CMDA as a part-time associate.
But you're also working with Christopher Yuan a little bit too, right? You said?
That's true, yeah. You could call that vocational ministry. It was definitely, I consider all of my education as a ministry background.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't say I'd ever really done vocational ministry full-time before this.
So you were an area director at Cincinnati, and then the role opens up. This role for area director, or regional director, that is, for the Midwest and for the West. Replacing, I think our audience, if you're familiar with CMDA, would know that there were two individuals in your positions before you arrived, Michael McLaughlin, Alan Harmer.
Titans.
The Wonder Twins. Yeah. No, they've been doing this for almost 70 years combined, I think, weren't they? They were involved with CMDA.
Even more, yeah.
So here you have these giants of CMDA. They've been regional directors. They've been invested in our communities at large. They have a rich wealth of institutional memory. They both end up retiring at about the same time. And so that leaves us with an opportunity to share this role with you all and for you all to consider taking it. What was did that challenge of stepping into a role that had been occupied by somebody as long as Alan and Michael had done, was that intimidating?
Yes and no. Honestly, it was one of the reasons why I wanted to take the job.
How was that?
Through LinkedIn, I had seen that Michael was connected to other people I knew.
Oh.
And so I called them and said, do you know this guy? Oh, yeah, he's great. I said, well, I'd love to – I have an opportunity basically to be mentored by him for a role, and would you recommend? They're like, oh, my goodness, yes, definitely. And so that was a big attraction to me. And I know the way in which God's equipped me to do things and how I've approached our region is different than Michael. And he's been so supportive no matter what. And he's very much willing to offer me advice when I ask. He texted me today a funny joke. So we're still in constant communications. There wasn't a feeling of trying to fill shoes.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part because of my background, knowing that, okay, this is how God's wired me. I can't, be him.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you were super gracious with that. It was really fun coming on with Connor, too, because he was doing that similarly with a seasoned veteran.
Yeah, and you all got to cross-train with the people you were replacing, so you got some on-the-job training. And
I got 9 months. I forget what you got.
I got close to a year. Well, and of course, I worked for Alan before applying for the role, since I was the Cincinnati CMDA director for several months before hearing about the regional director possibility.
Yeah. Well, what has it been in being a regional director that's resonated with you in particular? We post job descriptions, right? We tell you what the job is, but it never can ultimately reflect what you're going to be asked to do. So what's having now you dove in, you've been here for 3 years. What's really resonated with you? What really has been something that you've maybe expected or didn't expect, but that you really delight in the job that you have? Connor, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, it was the experience that I had working with CMDA before the regional director role that made me want the regional director role. And it's funny, before Alan had even announced his retirement, I had told my father that I wanted his job. Really? I don't remember if I've told either of you this, but it was March of 2021, And so I had been in the role for a few months as working with the medical students at the University of Cincinnati, but also getting to know some of the CMDA members in the greater Cincinnati area. Like I was given the list of our contacts in the area, and I was just reaching out to them one by one, and I'd have all these Zoom calls in 21. We're all still kind of in COVID mode, but I'd have these Zoom calls with these health professionals, and one just impressed me more than the next. I mean, it was just amazed by the living examples of health professionals in my area who knew Christ, and that made such a difference in their life, and it was visible, and I could see that. They were very generous, they were very humble, but they're also just really impressive people. Like, we've got some just stellar folks in our network, and I got to be sort of the conduit for putting together fellowship opportunities for those people, and also starting to get involved in the student ministry to help students turn into doctors like that, to help them grow into these, gracious, modest, and generous people. And so I told my dad all the way in March of 21, I said, what I'm hoping is that 5 years from now, when I'm finishing my dissertation, Alan Harmer will announce his retirement, and I'll have several years of experience, I'll be done with school, and I can apply for his job. Right. And then 2 months later, Alan said that he was going to retire. So.
Were you apprehensive, thinking, well, goodness, I just don't have the level of experience to step into these shoes? Was there some reluctance to put your hat in the ring?
Oh, yeah. I asked you if I should.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I said, Bill, would I be crazy for applying for this because I am young and inexperienced and I just got here? And I remember your response was very politically correct. You said, diplomatic. Thanks.
Yeah.
His response was, Connor, we'll prayerfully consider all applicants.
Yeah. So. Well, I didn't. I certainly did. Well, listen, I'm glad I didn't make any prejudgments, because to preach, I mean, let's be candid on this podcast. You're a young man. Yep. You're in your late 20s, right?
I am.
Yeah. So, I mean, some people would think, are you ready? Have you had the experience? And it would be easy to dismiss someone of your age, to think, well, it's just not possible. But I've come to find out that you're wise beyond your years. You're mature and have a real ability to grasp things so quickly as you've just taken off like a rocket, in this role, and it's been highly successful. So, yeah, I think that counsel I gave you was really wise, actually.
To yourself.
To myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. But seriously, I echo it. He is so impressive. I learned so much from him.
Yeah.
Stay with us. More Student Pulse podcast in just a moment. If you haven't registered for the 2025 CMDA National Convention, now is the time. Join us May 1st in historic St. Charles, Missouri on the banks of the Missouri River. With easy highway and airport access, this location says convenience. This year's beautiful accommodations are on the premises with the convention hall, but boasts nearby high-end hotels and B&Bs. Since there is limited time to save your spot, right now is the perfect time to register and join over 1,000 of your colleagues and community this May. See you there.
It wouldn't be fair to have pre-qualified any candidate, really. And what about you?
Yeah, things that have really been great with CMDA. I mean, I love our 4 pillars of community and advocacy, service, and equipping. I think all those, I really, each one I love. I think there's something, and maybe this goes back to my years. I was a associate and youth pastor for 10 years before the seminary, and so understanding how lonely ministry can be, both from a being in the trenches and then counseling people who were in it. Now discovering just how lonely, and maybe more so it is, to be a healthcare professional, but especially, a dentist or physician, surgeon, what have you. It's amazing. And so to come and be able to be present with someone, to hear them, and actually, I think sometimes, even though I'm not in that healthcare field, to get them, to know, I mean, that's incarnational ministry. So to be able to just be present in those moments are a gift. And I echo, there's just amazing people we have that we get to serve. So I think those things, and then lastly, connections, just to see God connect people that you did and not see it, but know that God's working. That is so humbling.
Yeah. I don't think people always understand what you all do as RDs, but you guys are a force multiplier. I mean, you're not doing the ministry, you're helping others, you're launching, you're making connections. You said that this morning in your chapel about just how important it is to make those networks, create those networks and connections.
It doesn't feel like you're doing ministry sometimes. But you're like, well, I just connected, these people. Yeah. But the reality is, when you start to understand over time, wow, that has fruit to it. That's one of the things that community needs is connections.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you're giving oversight and shepherding, needed oversight and shepherding to our members, or those involved in CMDA. I would say, though, you're doing so with a regional purview. I mean, that's a lot of states. I mean, probably close to a dozen for each of you in terms of states that you have to, give oversight to. That comes with it a lot of challenges, I would imagine. I mean, what are some of the challenges you've kind of come up against that?
None. It's been pretty easy. Oh, sorry.
Somehow I do not believe that.
Connor, you want to go first on that one?
Oh, well.
Nice.
Yeah. I'd say keeping up with volume of email is just an ongoing struggle. But no, but I mean, it is a challenge. I'd say especially when you're learning the ropes early on, and insofar as 3 years compared to the 35 that Alan Harmer did before me, I'm still early on. But trying to keep straight. Who are all of these contacts? Who are and learning? Because we've got over 5,000 people in the Midwest in our network, one way or another, and so learning. Okay, which of these are our champions? Which ones of these are our volunteers? Are our campus advisors? Are our current student leaders? Are and trying to get the lay of the land. That was a big thing. Every local ministry group, and this is very cool, but also takes a long time to get used to.
Right.
Every local ministry group is unique. They all have their own personalities, both the leaders and like the culture of the ministry that's unique everywhere you go. And so learning that, figuring that out, I still haven't figured it out in every place, but that's a challenge. It's a fun challenge.
Yeah. It's, you're getting kind of the lay of the land, getting to know kind of who are all the players, the areas, like you said, the unique context that they live in. But going another level deeper still is getting to know the people, getting into their lives, hearing their stories, hearing their testimonies, praying with them. I mean, now, obviously, that was the legacy that your predecessors left behind was years, decades of that kind of investment. And it obviously paid off in dividends. Something you're beginning to start to do, obviously, as you visit, because travel is a lot. I mean, you joked about email. Obviously, you have to do some administrative back-end, office type of support. You've got to manage yourself, organize, and so forth. But your work isn't done out of an office. Your work is done on the field, in people's homes, in their lives, visiting them in their communities, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think to answer the question fits right in with rhythm. Finding a rhythm is really hard. There's no one thing, which is awesome because you don't know what a day will bring. You might know where you'll be, but you might not know all that will transpire. And somebody might call with a need, or could be anything. So I think finding a rhythm has been really tricky for me, and I would imagine that'll always be the case. I think secondarily for me is knowing that there are catalytic events and opportunities and creating those. I mean, you could say just literally events are that. And I think that's why our national convention and why regional conferences are so key. But they're not my strong suit. So developing events and trying to create those opportunities in the areas so that people will come and can come, that'd be the only other challenge. I want to do it. It's just, okay, how do I navigate it? So it's just knowing yourself and weaknesses and finding people who can fill those needs. Yeah. It's really important to build a strong team around you, having key volunteers and key stakeholders that can come alongside. I mean, as much as we like to think we are, I mean, we're part of CMDA, but we're not ultimate insiders because we're
none of us have been trained medically or in healthcare. So we still stand outside looking in and trying to understand the world that they, inhabit. And there are unique challenges in that world. So I kind of want to reverse the question and say less about your challenges, but as you look at the people you're serving, as you get to know them, what are the challenges you see that have been perhaps a surprise?
External pressures that have nothing to do with medicine that impede on their ability to help people in that art. And I think the pressures of peers, whether they've been in the field for 30 years or they're doing research and trying to become a med student, there's this constant tension between people to better them, to be, successful in whatever that might be. And that comes naturally from the world, I think. But there's also these people are so gifted and they're so talented and they want to use everything they have for the glory of God.
Right.
What does that mean when ROI in ministry is hard to measure? In the kingdom of God, I think ROI is obedience. So how do you do that as a healthcare professional in each moment when you have these external pressures saying, oh no, you need to do this or you need to do that, or it's a shame, but because you go in to help people. And so I find that people do that, and then that's administrative, or I'm dealing with these dynamics politically or whatever within an office setting. So I always say that there's a reason why there's so many medical TV dramas, because it's hard to be in that setting, and there's a lot of push and pull. And apparently it's entertaining to watch. I don't know.
I guess so. What about you, Connor? What would you say to that?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Well, I was just talking about the challenges. You're looking at the constituents, the people in your region as you seek to minister to them. What are you looking and seeing at as some of the challenges that they're facing, and how do you, as an RD, come alongside them?
Well, I share with what you've already said too. Just we're foreigners coming into this, and so I joke that one of my goals year over year is to ask one less uninformed question, because especially early on, I'm trying to figure out what all these acronyms mean, not just internally to our organization, but just every organization has its own little word bank. But
you get the new guy excuse for a while.
Yeah,
but I think 3 years is beyond the
yeah. But the field of medicine though has its own dictionary, vocabulary, there's so many specialties, there's so many just different positions that people can occupy, so starting off by just trying to understand the students and the rhythm that they have going through medical school, and when you're first starting out, even when I was doing this part-time in Cincinnati several years ago, learning so really they have a ton of didactic, either first 2 years, lots of tests, lots of studying. One student, one of my first student leaders when I was part-time, he gave me this word picture. He said, medical school is like having a stack of pancakes served to you every morning, very large, like 4 really big pancakes, and your job is to eat all those pancakes today. And it's really hard, you're going to be very full, but you can do it. But if you only eat 3 of those pancakes, then the next day you're going to have to finish that pancake plus the 4 on the following day. And so it can accumulate and you can get buried very quickly. And so learning the challenges that the students are facing of just having to keep up and meet deadlines and pass those tests, and then they get into their years when they're in the rotations, and they get into residency, and it never really slows down for them. I mean, that 4th year maybe a little bit, so they can get to their interviews, but then they get into practice and they're very busy. And so just learning the very real struggle that it is to be a healthcare professional, both in training and once you're in practice, it's nuts. And I feel like now I'm just starting to really appreciate what our folks are confronted with in life.
Yeah.
And then it's fun, because then it's the challenges, for us in our ministry. How do we help you? How do we come alongside you and make sure that you get through this with your faith intact and, in fact, growing?
Yeah. I don't know what, I'm sure you've experienced this too, is in everything you just said, as arduous and difficult and challenging as this profession is, to watch so many of our members go through the difficulties, hardships, and challenges, but with grace and love and compassion for others, and desire to walk with God, be faithful and obedient to Him. And I know our role is to come alongside and to help equip the saints and to help them become ever-growing, maturing followers of Christ. And now, of course, at that level, regional level, you're playing a very high-level role. You do have a chance to visit, and you're getting into people's lives, but you're not it's obviously going to be different. It has been different, hasn't it, from being in Cincinnati, where you're very focused, highly focused in one community. Now you've got all of these communities.
Right.
How do you scale that?
Well, it is a different type of work.
Yeah, it is.
You go from really investing in the students at your school where you're working, and then getting to know your council and other local professionals, to then what really happens is you transition from just trying to know everybody in the area to knowing the key people in the area, wanting to know who the shakers and movers and champions of the ministry are. And it's a great joy to meet other people beyond those folks when you're in town visiting, especially when you can go to events. I love that. I was just a couple weeks ago in the Twin Cities with Dr. Chupp. He was speaking there at their annual event, and this is my third year in a row going to that event, and I love it. Now there's people who are not necessarily local leaders, but I've seen them now 3 years in a row, and I recognize them, I know them by name, and that's a lot of fun. But you can't do that everywhere with everybody, and so you do have to operate more on the level of the people who are actually doing what I was doing in Cincinnati. The people who are doing that ministry and actually being there for the people on the ground consistently.
Yeah. I mean, Wes, you tapped into this thought, and I'd echo it with you, Connor, is this idea of creating spaces. You've done such a fantastic job in bringing even greater life and vitality to the Midwest Regional Conference. Creating a space where people can come and gather. I mean, that's a force multiplier, because you're not traveling all their communities. These individuals are all coming to one place for fellowship and worship and training and learning and all that. It's, those kinds of things. You spend a lot of time and you spend a lot of work and a lot of effort, but I believe the payoff has been really fantastic, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things this year was the fall conference.
Yeah.
We had Carl Truman as our speaker.
Okay,
Just
now
had
you're
to name drop.
Well, while you're
he's
at
on
it,
our other podcast that was recorded today.
We've already done Christopher Yu on, and
yeah, but I didn't drop.
Well,
I was being humble.
That's true.
Well, why not?
I'm still hungry from the pancakes. Let's just bring it down here.
Yeah. Well, while you're at it, why don't you just go ahead and promote who do you have for next year?
Well, I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah.
Next year we've got Dr. Farr Curlin and Dr. Stephen Coe coming to the Midwest Fall Conference, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, the Fall Conference is one of my. It's quickly becoming one of my more. There's a lot of things I like about my job, but it's got to be up there with one of my favorite things. I really like. I don't mind event planning, actually. I kind of enjoyed those details. I especially like recruiting students to come to the conference, because historically we haven't had a lot of students at the fall conference. That happens every fall up in Muskegon, Michigan. Technically, I think it's in Norton Shores, Michigan, at Maranatha Conference Center there, and it's a great conference. It's a great venue, but we just haven't really tapped into students until recently, and so through scholarships, especially, we've been able to go from having no students to last year having about 8 or 10 students to this year having more than 40 students.
Yeah.
So it's been really, really cool.
Stay with us. More Student Pulse podcast in just a moment.
I want to switch gears and maybe ask a somewhat personal question. The work you do can seem very isolating. I mean, you're out on the West Coast, Sacramento. No other CMDA employees. Your team is distributed. We're all across the country. Some of us are here in Bristol. How does that? How do you deal with feeling like you're just not doing this by yourself? How do you find community or any level of community in the middle of a work that could be isolating? You know, you've got your office in Sacramento. You travel a bunch. Is that a struggle? Is that a challenge?
Yes, it is. And I think during COVID, we all had kind of that loneliness, and we had to build into it. The travel was definitely an impact. We were in a marriage small group that I think I failed this semester. I went to 3 sessions out of the 12. I was just traveling, and it just didn't work out well. So that was a bummer, trying to get community even in the church and realizing this is really hard because of, again, that word rhythm. I think having, seeking out people who will help you. I know mentoring is a big deal in CMDA and with med students in general, and knowing the limitations and the needs are really, really important. And then just seeking out, I think, knowing that I've got a Paul, a Barnabas, a Timothy, kind of constantly, that's it's happened naturally, I think, for me for a long time. I think being a people person too, that kind of comes easy, but it can be tough. I think our team does a great job, the 8 of us on a campus community ministry team to connect, whether it be weekly or as needed. Connor will call me when I'm on a campus and we'll talk for a half hour or, dealing with things. It's about community, right? So we're a community that's helping each other even, but there is a need for things outside that. So that's a good question. It kind of goes back to those challenges, but it can definitely be lonely at times. It's been so busy sometimes that it doesn't, you don't have time to be lonely.
Well, maybe I'm asking that question for myself because when I was an area director, I was the only person with CMDA in a big city like Atlanta, and I'd see people through appointments, but I was doing this work by myself, and I having come from Crew, my background there, everything was about teams. We had teams on site, in communities, on chapter, on campuses as such. And so I kind of became accustomed to that kind of model. And so I know it's a different kind of way of kind of operating a little bit.
We have area directors. You've got some. I've got Brian Stout in Phoenix, and my predecessor Michael still working in the Northwest. And I tried to create team there too, but they've got their own challenges being isolated. So it is very tricky. And if anybody's listening and has ideas, I would welcome them. I mean, it's true. It's hard.
Well, I mean, I know we try. Again, it's not a substitute, but it does help. We as a team, and it's 4 regional directors, and then our 4, myself and our other staff here in Bristol, all 8 of us, we gather together once a week. And if there was a gift from COVID, it was that we all became highly trained in video and virtual kind of meetings and using the technology. So hopping on calls like that once a week, staying connected. Of course, now you're here in person, so as often as possible, trying to find those in-person opportunities together, of course, and always being accessible and available to one another, I think helps. But I know it can be a challenge, and especially, anybody in vocational ministry understands the temptation of just feeling like, you can live in isolation sometimes. So it's a challenge. Let me ask you about your hopes and dreams for the region. I mean, as you look ahead, maybe a couple years, what do you hope and dream that you can see happen in the West?
Well, I hope CMDA, will continue to have a voice and be heard from all, sides of different issues, and will have an impact on what is going on in healthcare, but also in helping the church to know how best to think about medical and ethical things. So I think that is, it's almost an advocacy piece, right? Like I'd love to be able to see that. And the West is notoriously more liberal, if you will, and same with the Northeast, maybe the East, but frankly, it's the people, right? I mean, it's just media portrays different things. So I think finding people who will continually be winsomely courageous, if you will, to have to generate more community. I mean, I think from a vision standpoint, I would love to have 20 community chapters and solid campus advisors and all 50 schools, but I think again it's a matter of seeing God move, pray, and build into and disciple people.
Well, and you've also done a great job in strategizing how you look at the West. You don't see it as a singular unit. You see it as 5 kind of subregions, because you know that each of them geographically are somewhat unique and, kind of identify amongst themselves a bit more than other places. Because, you may say it's one region, but it's one of the, I think, geographically the biggest. So.
Well, if we have Alaska, that makes it half the country. So.
Well, you do have Alaska and Hawaii, which you had the privilege of visiting. I know.
Somebody's got to suffer for Jesus in the islands.
Yeah. What about you, Connor? What are your dreams and hopes and vision for the Midwest?
Yeah. Well, of course, a lot of what Wes said applies to the Midwest region as well. Would love to see our existing community chapters grow and be healthy and strong. And, the dream, right, is if a resident matches in any city in the country, that we can hand them off to several godly professionals in their area who are, awaiting that introduction and ready to connect. That's what we really want. We want to help people get through these difficult years, but not even just of their training, just as people just move around or just discover CMDA. Maybe they've been living in the same city for a long time, but they just heard about CMDA and they want to get connected. We want to have an infrastructure for them to plug into. We want to be able to connect people, to network them and support them in their faith.
And I think that's one of the most important things we do, helping people realize they're not alone. And again, too many of our Christian healthcare professionals, they live in isolation. Of course, they're busy. They're keeping their head down. They're trying to get through what they need to do, and to make sure that they can find some semblance of community, no matter where they happen to land, would be really important. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, let's just kind of close our time by maybe asking you to tell me what are you most excited about? I mean, as you look into the future, what are you most excited about? CMDA, your work with it, the healthcare professionals you're working with. Is there something that really has got you energized, optimistic about?
Yeah, well, like I said, I do enjoy event planning. And I've been really encouraged. This is the first year that in the Midwest we really went after scholarships to help students attend the national convention in the spring and also the Midwest Fall Conference. And, of course, it's not our first year doing scholarships, but we gave special attention to that this year. And I was just blown away by the generosity of a lot of our folks who stood up and said, I want to help students get there. And so, the fact that we had such a great turnout at the fall conference and, the national convention too. I mean, the last 2 years we've had over 170, 180 students and residents at the national convention, which is just crazy. I mean, the previous record was 80-something. So to be in the 170s, 180s is really encouraging. We're seeing that there are a lot of people in general, but especially young people who really do want to connect and they really want this encouragement and this equipping that they can find in CMDA. And so I'm most excited about continuing to cultivate that and see that develop. I think it'd be great if at some point we could have a second Midwest conference on the western half of the region. Right now we've got a recurring reservation at a wonderful venue there in Michigan. I don't see us moving that conference, but it is pretty far for our folks in Kansas and Nebraska, Minnesota, the Dakotas. And so having something on the western half would be ideal. I'm hoping to build something like that. We're hoping to do a missions conference in Chicago in future years. So, we've got our work cut out for us. We do already have a student retreat that's now in its third year. That was totally at the initiative of students in Kansas and Missouri. And I'll be their speaker in January, and I am so excited to be with them.
You're still name dropping, aren't you?
Myself?
Yeah.
Can you drop your own name? Wow.
You drop your own name.
I'm just so proud of these student leaders.
Yeah.
I mean, they at their own initiative, starting a retreat center, or starting a student retreat and making it annual. And this year Nebraska is going to be a part of it as well. And so, I mean, there were over 80 students that came last year.
Well, and I know we can't go deep into details on this, but some students came to Christ through that conference too.
That's right. Last year we had a young lady give her life to the Lord at that conference, and so we're praying for the Lord to work in the lives of people again in January.
That's cool. Wes?
The question was, again, what are we excited to see?
Yeah, what excites you as you look into the future? What gets you charged?
That's funny. The first thought I had was, no one in my family's in healthcare, whatsoever. My daughter became in the process of becoming a nursing student, and just the notion of somebody in my family being part of that healthcare in general, and knowing how folks can connect and that she can have an impact. This is selfish, but it's just true. I mean, not being aware of it. Just very, very humbling. I too am looking forward to having opportunities for people to connect in the different areas you mentioned in our region. Events are those things, whether or not we as CMDA run them or we're just piggybacking on something that is done by someone else. Sure. Great. But I think it's important for each area to have a place to connect with one another. And I think I would really like to see different area directors in our areas. I would love for communities to work together to say, hey, we need somebody who's going to support us and bring us to the next level, because we're healthcare professionals and super busy. We just need somebody to help us get there. So I think those are two of the biggies is area specific.
Very cool. Well, this has been fun. This has been a good conversation. We've been doing a lot of work today, and we'll do some tomorrow with planning and envisioning the future and helping us to press deeper yet still into our strategic plan and goals. And so we've got a lot of work. But it was good to just do a check-in to see how 3 years. That's a good anniversary. It's a time for you to have enough experience under your belt to kind of get a good understanding of CMDA and not feel like a deer caught in headlights, because it's a lot to take in. I think to your point, a lot to learn. But I've been real encouraged by the way God has put together this team, because you both serve as RDs, and Tom Grosh in the Northeast and Grant Hewitt in the South, and there's a lot of challenges in all the things we do, and there can be a lot of pressures and just a lot of work. But what really kind of can make it all such a delight and a blessing is who you do it with. They say the organization you're with, you take into account the cause. That we're committed to a mission and a vision that excites us. That we are doing it with people that delight us. That we have chemistry with and community with, and we do it unto the glory of God. And so I couldn't think of two better guys to do this work together, get into shoulder to shoulder in the trenches, and to see lives changed and transformed by the gospel through healthcare. And so I'm glad you guys are in this with me. Yeah,
Bill, I have to add, since you just said that of course you interview a lot of students and residents and docs on this podcast. But you don't get, the viewers at home don't very often get to hear from people who actually work for you. And so, you're largely to take credit for how well our team works. And it's a joy to work for you and with you. And so I'm very grateful for this conversation, but also for all the many conversations that we get to have with you throughout the year and for your leadership.
Well, thank you. That's going to look very well on your next performance review. Thank you very much.
I take cash,
Did you just drop his name?
All right. Sorry. Well, as you can tell, we like working with each other. I wasn't sure where that was going to go, so it landed well.
I echo it. Real deal. not just a pretender.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for being part of this conversation, and we look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of CMDA Student Pulse Podcast. We'll see you then. Bye.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. CMDA's Student Pulse Podcast is a production of the Christian Medical and Dental Associations. The opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are not necessarily endorsed by the organisation. CMDA is non-partisan and does not endorse political parties or candidates for public office. The views expressed on Student Pulse podcast reflect judgments regarding principles and values held by CMDA and its members.